Hi there, welcome to Inde-Car on the 27th of August. Today's programme looks at two topics. I think it's fair to say that there's been an awful lot of comment recently about the riots occurring on England's streets. Now, there's also been a lot of comment here in Scotland's online community about why we've not seen the same kind of rioting here in Scotland. I think the answer to that is that people in England are actually reacting to what Sir Keir Starmer has done in his first few days as the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. And what he's done effectively is impoverish a huge chunk of the United Kingdom's population by ending the winter fuel payments. Now, this supplementary fund, if you like, this money which is given usually to elderly citizens to help them to pay for their fuel bills, is regarded, I think, in the Labour Party as rewarding the rich. In other words, they are using this excuse that it was a reward. It was basically giving money to pensioners who were already wealthy and that actually didn't need this money. So if that were the argument and that was the real reason for doing this, then why not simply make it means tested, so that anybody who has a private pension and who's sitting pretty and can easily afford their energy bills doesn't get the payment. But that's not what Keir Starmer has done. He's basically just pulled the rug out from under everyone. So that's caused alarm and consternation, but as I mentioned in yesterday's programme, at the same time as doing that, he's given carte blanche to Ofgem to raise the energy price cap by 10%. Now, the energy companies of the United Kingdom, and there are 6 of these large corporations, are essentially a massive multiple monopoly of 6 companies who all charge approximately the same ridiculous amounts of money for the energy that they supposedly provide. Now, bearing in mind that Scotland's energy, 98% of it, comes from renewables, which is virtually free, why is it that our energy bills are skyrocketing as well, when we plainly are producing far more electrical energy for virtually nothing from the wind than almost any other part of the UK? And the answer to that is, of course, that the Labour Party is trying to cozy up to these big multinational corporations. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if there weren't some corruption going on at the heart of the UK government, perhaps corruption that is carried over from the Tory administration and is now infecting the Labour administration. So I think the reason for all the riots, particularly in England, is partly because of this activity. And the fact that Sir Keir Starmer has told the electorate in all of the United Kingdom that it's going to get worse, that he's going to make it worse, which is more to the point. And when people hear that their lives are going to get worse than they already are, and it's being done deliberately by their own government, the one that they voted in, thinking that it would be better than the Tories, you can expect some backlash to come, certainly from younger people on the streets who see their future disappearing down a black hole of both taxation and overpayments to big fat cat multinational corporations whose shareholders stand to benefit by millions, if not billions of pounds in additional profits, not to mention the fat cat CEOs of these gigantic corporations who are already multimillionaires, who are going to make massive bonuses because of these extra profits that they're making. So this profiteering is something which is bound, I think, to cause rioting, particularly in England. But why has it not happened in Scotland? Perhaps it's because the Scottish people understand that the reason why the Scottish government has been deprived of the funding it needs to help pensioners through the winter fuel crisis is because Westminster has cut the funding. I heard this morning, if I read a comment by George Fawkes, or should I say Lord Fawkes, who was basically bemoaning the fact that the Scottish government should take responsibility for cutting all these benefits, particularly to pensioners and so on, and saying that it's a Scottish responsibility to do something about this. But the Scots people know that the money that we get to run the country is effectively a tiny share of the taxation that we have already paid, and most of it is coming to us, not all of it. About 60% of what we actually pay in taxes is actually given back in the so-called block grant, as if we have to ask permission to be given back taxes which we already paid. However, we're not getting 40% of that back. That is remaining somewhere down in the bowels of Westminster and Whitehall to be disbursed in other places in the UK, which are obviously perhaps even more impoverished than Scotland is. So the people here understand that it is not the Scottish Parliament or the Scottish Government's fault that the funding has been cut. And therefore the anger on the streets is just not there. It's certainly not there for that reason anyway. The only protests that go on in Scotland are those for independence and occasional flag-wearing, drum-beating, Orange Lodge marches, which, let's face it, are a dwindling minority of Scotland's population. The only other time I've ever seen any kind of crowd which caused any sort of confrontation with the police in Scotland was when the United Kingdom's Immigration Service tried to deport some Scottish shopkeepers back to presumably somewhere like Pakistan or India where their families originated. And that was stopped by basically people power. It wasn't violent. They basically just prevented these officers from huckling these poor people away and forcing them onto a plane back to Pakistan, where obviously they didn't want to be. The family is over here in Glasgow. So when it comes to supporting shopkeepers in Scotland, particularly in Glasgow, that's the time when you might see people out on the streets, not out there setting fire to cars or looting shops, or kicking lumps out of each other, or throwing bricks and chairs at the police. We don't need to do that because, well, we don't protest about things that we can't control because we can't control them. That's happening because of Sir Keir Starmer's decisions in the South. Now, another thing I think which is decided in the South and which has come back to the fore recently is Flamingoland's attempts to build an amusement park on the south shore at Loch Lomond. Now, for those of you who don't know, this patch of land at Balloch, at the south end of Loch Lomond, used to be the site of a dye works, a small factory that made dyes for cloth. When that factory closed down many decades ago, the owners actually gave the land to the people of Balloch, and it was in the keeping of the local authority. Now, that local authority decided, for whatever reason, nobody really knows, to give that for basically a peppercorn payment to the Scottish enterprise. Now, before you think, well, Scottish enterprise, that's great, it's going to invest in that area. Scottish enterprise is a United Kingdom agency designed to bring companies into Scotland from outside of Scotland to invest here. Now, that on the face of it seems like a great idea, bring investment to an area that needs it. The trouble is, the people that they selected to give this opportunity to, Flamingoland, is a big English firm of amusement park owners and creators. Now, Flamingoland has, over the last 10 years, I think, made 3 different planning proposals for different types of developments on this site, none of which the people of Scotland wanted, and certainly none of which the people of Balloch wanted either. And as a result, there have been several petitions organised primarily by the Greens MSP Ross Greer to save Loch Lomond shores from this massive development. The development itself would be inappropriate. This is an area of great natural beauty because after the dye works was removed, the land reverted to its natural state. So it is used by dog walkers, by tourists, by sightseers, and it's a place of natural beauty, and it is full of wildlife. Except that Flamingoland wants to bulldoze the entire thing, build a great big centre, a car park, chalets, and eventually, probably, they're going to build all sorts of amusement rides as well, in a sort of similar vein to some of their previous theme parks in England. As I've said, the locals don't want this. But the problem is that when Scottish Enterprise got hold of this land, which they had no right to, and which the council had no right to give them in the first place, but when they got hold of it, they decided to to write a contract with Flamingoland in this case, to grant them permanent right to build whatever they wanted on this site. Now, what that means is that this British-steered Scottish Enterprise agency has given this company a right in perpetuity to build on that site. Now, there is no other place I know in Scotland where the development agency has effectively given a piece of land in perpetuity to a foreign company and said to them, you can build what you like on that, subject to planning consent. Which means that this is going to go on for another 10 years, 20 years. Every year, Flamingoland is going to come up with another design proposal to put to the planning permission people. And every time they do that, there's going to be another massive petition. And so far, the current petition has reached 140,000 signatures. And that's probably one of the largest petitions in Scotland that there's ever been. People in Scotland don't want this. They don't want a Flamingoland theme park at Ballach. They want it left alone. They want the people of Ballach to keep ownership of this. It should never have been taken from them in the first place. And in fact, I think personally, there is a possibility for a crowd-funded lawsuit against the local authority and Scottish enterprise for misappropriating land which was owned by the people and was unlawfully taken from them and given to corporations. So this current fight for this part of Loch Lomond is ongoing at the moment. Ross Greer has a page up at the moment, Save Flamingoland. You'll find it online. I recommend that you sign this petition. But also the news today is that Ross Greer has announced that the Greens are writing to John Swinney to demand that the First Minister and the Scottish Government put an end to this contract to stop this potential ruining of part of Scotland's landscape and one of its national parks, remember, permanently, so it can never happen. And send Flamingo back down south, build their theme parks elsewhere. We don't want it here. Anyway, those are basically the news items for today. So we have no riots in Scotland because we know that the reason that we're having problems in Scotland with money, with bills, is not to be laid at the Scottish Government's door or the Scottish Parliament's door. It is the fault of Keir Starmer, and it is him that we should direct our anger at. And on the plus side, People Power has prevented a big corporation from England from misappropriating a piece of land and building an unwanted development in the middle of a national park. And we need John Swinney and his government to put an end to this once and for all by legislating this agreement between the British-ruled Scottish, in inverted commas, enterprise and this Flamingoland corporation. They need to stop this, and they need to stop it now. We don't want a perpetual battle going on between the people of Scotland and Flamingoland over a piece of land that really should have been in public hands and still should be. Anyway, that's it from Inde-Car today. I will see you again later in the week. Thank you to everybody who has continued to contribute to my crowdfunders. If you want to donate to Inde-Car, you can do so through my PayPal link. I'll try and renew that, put a fresh link up for you if you want. In the meantime, as I always say, keep the faith. But remember, Scotland is fighting constantly against British interference in its own internal workings, and we have to keep fighting it. Otherwise, they are going to take the place over, and we will be overrun with foreign corporations from other places that we don't want ruining our countryside. That's it from me today. I'll see you all later in the week. Bye for now.